All right, so at some point you're going to be responsible for figuring out who your best option is for a bassoonist. If they don't come walking right up to you saying, I want to play bassoon, then who are you looking for? So you can look for a few different personal characteristics and a couple physical characteristics to figure out who's a good fit for the bassoon. Now, it's a good idea to pick somebody who already has some success on their instrument, and so they already have a musical skill set. It also helps to have a student who's really responsible, who can take care of that expensive instrument. You're also looking for someone who's an investigator or somebody who discovers things on their own, someone who's pretty smart. It's a challenging instrument, but with the right motivation, the right student can really go far on the bassoon. You'll also want to keep in mind the realities of the monetary cost of playing the bassoon. So reeds are not cheap, and reed supplies are not cheap, and bassoons themselves are incredibly expensive, perhaps some of the most expensive instruments in the band room. So whether that student's using a school instrument or not, they're going to need some family support. So make sure that they're coming from a family that understands the cost of bassoon playing and is willing to support that student in that opportunity. So physically, most students can handle the bassoon, but it is a good idea to check their hands and make sure that they're going to be successful. And the best way to do that is probably just to get out a piece of the bassoon or put it all together and see if they can reach all the way from, for instance, left hand on the whisper around to covering the tone holes, and just see if they're able to reach that without too much tension in their hand. With the right hand, I would not recommend testing out someone's finger length with a crutch. Since that crutch pushes your hand a little bit further away from the bassoon, it might be deceiving. They might actually be able to get down there with their right hand if there were no crutch there. But make sure that they're going to be successful. And other than that, the only thing that could be kind of a problem is a pronounced underbite. So there is a little bit of an overbite to the bassoon embouchure, and an underbite just fights against that all the time. And we don't want to put a student in a situation where you have to ask them to do something that physically just doesn't work for them. So technically, make sure they have about a year of woodwind experience. At least that's preferable. And that could be on a flute. Okay, flutes are going to have a generally slightly more relaxed embouchure when it comes to actually playing on a reed because they haven't really been gripping down on anything. So they take to the embouchure pretty well and they really know how to move air. But what's different for a flute player significantly is the covering of those tone holes. Assuming that that flute player has not been playing an open-holed flute, which they probably haven't after 1 year, they're going to really have to learn a little bit about how to seal those tone holes and learn how to operate that type of woodwind instrument. So then clarinet or saxophone are also decent choices to switch to the bassoon, but their biggest habit is going to be really, really firming up their embouchure when they want better tone or when they want to do something on their instrument. So typically they're just going to want to bite too much, and we know that really has to come from air support. The embouchure needs to be formed correctly, but there's the whole air embouchure balance, and that's really important. So, transferring a current woodwind player to a bassoon is a great move. If you have a really great student whose hands look just a little bit too small, they do make small attachments which go on some of the keys, especially for the left hand, because that ring finger has to extend out pretty far, straight. So sometimes they make what's called a plateau key, and that gets inserted or replaces the key that's currently on that hole, and it basically extends a key up so that a student can press a key instead of actually sealing the hole, and it's got a pad so it will seal the hole on its own. So anyway, you can look for a bassoon with a plateau key or a short reach bassoon if you're trying to really find an instrument for a student whose hands just don't seem like the right size. Additionally, familiarity with bass clef is important, since that's what the bassoon reads most of the time. And keep in mind, this student is going to need to be familiar with tenor clef in the future. Finally, you need somebody who really is excited about playing the bassoon. So if you demonstrate it for the class, you might find that somebody in the room really likes the sound and the look of that instrument. So find somebody who really would like to learn it. The most important thing to remember is that with the right equipment, learning the bassoon doesn't have to be that hard. But if you don't have a working instrument or the reeds are so-so and nobody's checking them, learning the bassoon is way harder than it really should be. So check that equipment, get some good supplies, and get really good instruments and information to those students who want to learn bassoon. And they'll go far.